My name is Brielle Carter. I'm 31 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought kindness was my greatest strength. Turns out to the wrong person, it's just an invitation to be used. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the kind that hums with routine. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly reports, half listening to the steady rhythm of keyboards around me when my phone buzzed. I smiled when I saw the name Matthew. My boyfriend of 2.5 years. We'd been living together for 8 months. He usually texted to ask what I wanted for dinner or send a dumb meme. But the preview line froze me before I even opened it. "We need to talk. You are too kind. Kind girls get stepped on. I need someone ruthless." I thought it was a joke. I even laughed quietly in disbelief before tapping the message open. He'd written it all out, neatly formatted like a resignation letter. "You're wonderful, Brielle. Sweet. Thoughtful. But I can't be with someone who plays small. I need a woman who wants to win in life and work and everything. Someone who challenges me. You make me comfortable. Too comfortable." Then the last line, "It's over." Just that. No phone call, no conversation. A breakup via text while I was sitting in a cubicle surrounded by spreadsheets. For a long minute, I stared at the screen. I read the message again and again until the words stopped making sense. 2.5 years. A shared apartment. Plans for Paris next spring. All erased by a few sentences typed between conference calls. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there frozen in the fluorescent glow, hearing the echo of his words, "too kind." After work, I drove our home with hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make my knuckles pale. The apartment smelled faintly like his cologne, the one I'd once found comforting. Now it made the air feel heavy. I started packing his things, quietly, methodically, folded his suits, unplugged his chargers, slid his grooming kits into a box. I didn't rush. I wanted the motion to mean something, to prove I could move without falling apart. When I reached for his planner, something slipped out from between the pages, a sleek white business card. Danielle Mercer, pharmaceutical entrepreneur. There were notes scribbled beneath follow-up next week cocktails, little hearts dotting the margins. Of course. 3 weeks ago, he'd gone to a networking event. I'd stayed home to finish a report he said was too boring for him to sit through. So this was his ruthless woman. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that card, the irony stinging deeper than the betrayal. He left me for someone who fit his idea of a winner. Maybe she had sharper elbows, louder laughter, hungrier eyes. Maybe that was what he wanted, the thrill of chaos disguised as confidence. I placed the card on his box of belongings. Then I wrote a single message back. "You're right. I'll have your things ready by Friday." He responded instantly. "Wait, that's it. No fighting for us." My fingers trembled, but I typed anyway. "You said kind girls get stepped on. Why would I prove you wrong?" Then I turned off my phone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge seemed to mock me. I replayed our years together, the late-night grocery runs, his hand on my knee, during long drives, the way he'd talk about someday. All of it dissolved into a single truth: he'd mistaken gentleness for weakness. By morning, the ache had hardened into something steadier. Focus. I stood before the mirror, tying my hair back, eyes still swollen from exhaustion. "You wanted a ruthless woman," I whispered to my reflection. "Congratulations. You made one." At work, I walked straight into Tom's office, my boss. He looked up from his laptop, startled. "Brielle." "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "Not yet. But it will be. I'm applying for the senior director position." "I've been handling half of Davidson's workload since his surgery, plus my own. I deserve it." He blinked, stunned. I'd never spoken that directly. "I didn't realize you were interested," he stammered. "I've been interested. I just stopped waiting to be noticed." By the afternoon, HR called. Promotion approved. 40% salary increase. Corner office. I walked out of the meeting with shaking hands and a strange calm, not revenge relief. 2 weeks later, Matthew came to pick up his things. He looked smaller, somehow thinner. The charm that used to draw rooms toward him had dulled. He lingered in the doorway. "Brielle, can we talk?" "No. Please." "Danielle," I cut him off. "Let me guess. She turned out to be ruthless." He flinched. "How'd you know?" I shrugged. "Winners attract each other." He looked down, defeated. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the man I loved, but as a boy chasing applause. When he finally left, the apartment felt clean. Empty, yes, but mine. That weekend, I went to a charity gala, the kind of event I'd always skipped because Matthew said they were boring unless you're networking. I went alone, and that's where I saw Sebastian. Tall, confident, the kind of man who made conversation feel like music. I recognized him instantly, Matthew's so-called rival in PR. We'd met briefly at events back when I was the girlfriend. He smiled when he saw me. Brielle Carter. I almost didn't recognize you. You look... He paused, choosing the word carefully. Free. I laughed the first real laugh in weeks. That's one word for it. We talked for hours about work, about balance, about how people mistake ambition for cruelty. When I told him how Matthew had broken up with me, he winced. He actually said that kind girls get stepped on word for word. He shook his head. Then he's never met someone strong enough to stay kind. That line stayed with me all night. When I got home, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from Matthew. 2 texts. I made a mistake. I miss you. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my balcony door and let the city noise wash in. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel stepped on. I felt awake. Maybe Matthew was right about one thing: kind girls do get hurt. But only until they remember that kindness and weakness aren't the same. And I had no intention of being anyone's lesson ever again. I woke up before dawn the next day, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I finally could. The air felt cleaner, sharper. The kind of quiet that usually feels lonely now felt like peace. The promotion hadn't even sunk in yet. Senior director. The title glowed on the email from HR, like proof that I wasn't who Matthew said I was. For years, I'd told myself being humble was enough, that good work would speak for itself. Turns out in this world, silence only gets you ignored. When I arrived at the office, the energy was different. People looked at me differently, a mix of surprise and curiosity. My assistant Emma grinned. "Boss lady suits you," she said, handing me my new access badge. "Guess it does," I replied. But under the confidence, there was something else. A small, uneasy question. What if this isn't who I really am? That night I got my answer. Matthew called, twice. I didn't pick up. Then came the message. "You were right. Danielle wasn't who I thought she was. She's been arrested. Please, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Arrested, I searched her name. Dozens of articles popped up. Pharmaceutical entrepreneur caught selling counterfeit medication. Her mugshot, cold, tired eyes. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I didn't reply. Instead, I set my phone face down and went for a run. It was something I used to do every morning before Matthew said I looked too serious when I ran, like I was competing with myself. Maybe I was, and maybe that was the point. I ran until the world blurred, until the anger burned off and left behind something steadier purpose. That weekend, Emma convinced me to attend a charity gala she was volunteering for. Networking opportunity, she teased, echoing Matthew's old favorite phrase. I almost declined. Then I remembered the way I used to shrink to fit other people's comfort zones. I went. The venue was a converted library chandelier string quartet people, sipping wine while pretending to care about literacy programs. I stood near the back, sipping water, when I heard a familiar voice. Brielle Carter in the flesh. I turned startled, and there he was, Sebastian Hale. Tall, composed, that subtle charisma that doesn't demand attention, but earns it. Matthew used to talk about him constantly, always with a thin smile. Sebastian's everyone's favorite. Too polished. Too fake. But looking at him now, there was nothing fake. Just calm confidence. "I didn't expect to see you here," I said. He smiled. "You didn't seem like the type to miss a good cause." I laughed softly. "Guess I'm full of surprises lately." We talked for nearly an hour. About work life, the strange emptiness that comes after shedding someone who once felt permanent. He didn't ask about Matthew directly, but when I mentioned the breakup, his expression shifted, thoughtful, not judgmental. "I heard he left the agency," Sebastian said carefully. "Yeah. For someone who promised to climb higher, he fell fast." Sebastian tilted his head. "That's the thing about people who confuse ambition with cruelty. They don't climb, they claw. Eventually, they run out of walls to scratch." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I exhaled, a quiet laugh slipping out. "You're good at metaphors." "Occupational hazard," he said. "I write a lot of client speeches." He paused, eyes warm. "You look better without him." That line caught me off guard, not flirtatious, just sincere. I didn't know what to say. "Thank you," I managed. When I left the gala, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Matthew. "You're seeing him, aren't you, Sophia's golden boy? You couldn't wait." I didn't even dignify it with a response. Instead, I blocked his number. Over the next few weeks, my world began to shift. Not in grand gestures, just subtle, steady ways. Morning coffee tasted better when I made it for myself. My office door felt like a small victory every time I walked through it. And Sebastian, he kept showing up, not in intrusive ways. A friendly email here, a call to ask my opinion on a project there. We started meeting for coffee on Sundays, half business, half not. He listened when I talked. Not the polite, distracted listening I was used to, but the kind that made me feel heard, seen. One Sunday, as we walked through the park, he said something that stuck. You know you're not kind because you're weak. You're kind because you're strong enough to stay decent in a world that rewards cruelty. That's rare. I smiled, but inside something cracked open, relief mixed with fear. Because I'd spent so long trying to prove I wasn't soft that I'd almost forgotten why I was kind in the first place. For the first time, I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted renewal. Still, not everyone was ready for my transformation. My colleague Jason joked at lunch. Since the promotion, you've got more edge. What happened, leadership training or heartbreak? I smiled. Both. One taught me to stand up. The other taught me not to kneel. By mid-February, the company newsletter announced my promotion publicly. The photo of me, confident smiling, made its way through LinkedIn. It didn't take long for Matthew to see it. He created a fake account to comment, "Amazing what heartbreak can do. Some people only rise when they've got someone to step on." I deleted it without a word. Later that night, Sebastian texted me a screenshot of the same post. "Ignore him. He's digging his own grave." "I know," I replied. "Still, if you ever want a distraction, there's a charity auction next week. I could use some company." I hesitated for half a second, then I typed, "Only if there's good wine." "Always," he wrote back. That was the night I realized my story wasn't about revenge at all. It was about finally choosing me. Because sometimes the best way to win is to stop playing their game entirely. If you had told me a few months ago that I'd be attending Fashion Week on the arm of Sebastian Hale, the man my ex once called his professional nemesis, I'd have laughed. Or cried. Probably both. But life has a way of handing you irony wrapped in elegance. Sebastian and I had grown close in that quiet, organic way that feels both inevitable and surprising. Coffee had turned into lunches, into late-night strategy talks that sometimes drifted into personal confessions. He never pushed, never performed. He just stayed, steady, patient. So when he invited me to the fashion preview event, strictly business, he'd teased. I hesitated only a moment before saying yes. The venue shimmered with glass and noise cameras, flashing perfume thick in the air. Models floated down the runway like visions. I was wearing a deep emerald dress, the kind I never would have dared to wear before. It wasn't to impress anyone. It was armor soft, but strong. Sebastian leaned in as we took our seats. "You look like someone who knows she belongs here." I smirked. "That's because I finally do." And then, as if summoned by fate's cruel sense of humor, Matthew. He appeared across the room, champagne glass in hand, laughing too loudly. But beneath the performance, I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the flicker of recognition as his eyes locked on me. Then on Sebastian. He froze. For a second, the noise of the room dimmed. I could almost hear the crack forming behind his smile. He started walking toward us. I felt Sebastian's subtle shift beside me, protective but calm. "Brace yourself," I murmured. "Always," he replied, his tone low even. Matthew stopped just short of us, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Wow, didn't take long, did it?" "Hello to you too," I said, forcing politeness. He gave a sharp laugh. "So, this is it, you and him, the ultimate revenge story." Sebastian's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed soft. Revenge. That implies we care enough to keep score. Matthew's smile faltered. "You always did love moral superiority, didn't you, Sebastian?" "I prefer peace of mind," Sebastian replied evenly. I reached for my glass unbothered. "You should try it sometime." The tension was magnetic, the kind that drew attention. Conversations around us slowed, people were watching. Cameras flashed discreetly. Matthew's mask cracked completely. "You think you've won, Brielle, dating my rival, making me look like the fool?" I stood meeting his height, steady and cool. "I don't need to make you look like anything, Matthew. You're doing that just fine on your own." His voice rose. "You'll regret this, both of you." "Matthew," I said softly. "The only regret I have is not realizing sooner that some people only feel alive when they're competing." Security had started to drift closer, subtle alert. The PR manager of the event, clearly mortified, whispered something into her headset. Sebastian gently touched my arm. "Let's step outside." We walked toward the balcony as murmurs followed. The night air hit like clarity, cool, sharp, honest. I exhaled slowly. That went about as well as expected. Sebastian chuckled quietly. "He's unraveling. The worst thing you can do to someone like that is stay calm." Then I must have just ruined his night, probably his month. We laughed not out of cruelty, but disbelief. There was something liberating in realizing I didn't need to fight anymore. The truth did that for me. Inside, through the glass doors, I could see Matthew being ushered away by a nervous intern. His shoulders were tense, his mouth moving fast, probably blaming someone, anyone. The man who once thrived on appearances now looked like a shadow of himself under the harsh white lights. "Doesn't it bother you?" Sebastian asked quietly. "What?" "That he's going to turn this into a story where he's the victim." I thought about it. It used to. Now I just feel sorry for him. When your self-worth depends on winning, every moment feels like losing. He nodded. "You know, there's something poetic about it. He left you because you were too kind, and now you're standing here successful, calm, radiant, while he's drowning in his own bitterness." Poetic or ironic, both. Later that night, after the event ended, I got home to another flood of messages from mutual friends, old coworkers, even journalists. "Was that really your ex causing a scene at the showgirl? You handled that like a queen." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I made tea, curled up on my couch, and turned off my phone. The world could talk. Let them. For once, my story didn't belong to anyone else. Still, as I looked out over the city lights, I couldn't shake a quiet dread, a whisper that this wasn't over, that men like Matthew don't disappear quietly. They explode. And when they do, they make sure the shrapnel hits everyone in sight. I just didn't know yet how far he'd go. The first sign that Matthew was unraveling came quietly like a low hum before the storm. At first, it was the online posts, subtle, cryptic, the kind of thing you could scroll past if you weren't looking closely. Some people build their success on betrayal. Not everyone who smiles is kind. I gave my heart to a snake. No names, but anyone who knew us understood the subtext. His followers, mostly colleagues and fashion world acquaintances, flooded the comments with hearts and sympathy. Victimhood always looks convincing when wrapped in curated sadness. I told myself to ignore it. He's just venting. That's what I said. That's what I wanted to believe. But the posts grew bolder, longer. Suddenly, I was the calculating woman who seduced her ex's rival for revenge. Sebastian was the manipulative narcissist who stole his ideas, his clients, and his life. We laughed at first, the absurdity of it. But the laughter faded when it reached work. One Monday morning, my assistant Emma walked into my office, her face pale. "Brielle, have you seen this?" She handed me her phone. A gossip blog headline. PR scandal, ex-agency manager, claims he was betrayed by former partner and rival executive. No direct names, but the details were unmistakable. The timeline, the industry, the rival executive. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Sebastian was calmer than I was when he came by that evening. "We'll handle it," he said, pouring wine, like we weren't reading our reputations burn online. "How?" "By not feeding it. He's waiting for a reaction." I rubbed my temples. "You're too calm." He smiled faintly. "I've seen people implode before. The loudest ones always fall the hardest." But the implosion came faster than either of us expected. 3 days later, security called from the front desk at my building. "Ms. Carter, there's a man here. Says he's your fiancé." The word hit like a punch. My what? He's insisting. Should we call the police? My voice came out colder than I felt. "I'll come down." The lobby lights were unforgiving, bright, sterile, exposing everything. Matthew stood near the reception desk, eyes wild, suit, wrinkled tie, half undone. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Brielle," he said the moment he saw me, relief flooding his voice. "Finally. Why are you here?" He stepped closer. "You won't answer my calls. I just needed 5 minutes." I took a step back. "You need to leave. Please." His voice cracked. "I made mistakes. I know that. Danielle ruined me, lied to me, used me, but I don't deserve this silence from you." I folded my arms. "You dumped me by text message, Matthew. You told me I was too kind. Remember?" He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "I didn't mean it. I was just honest." He looked at me, eyes glassy. "You've changed. You're colder now. That man, he's turned you against me." "That man," I said sharply, "had nothing to do with what you lost. You did that yourself." For a moment, the lobby went still. Even the receptionist stopped pretending not to watch. Then he said at the line that told me he'd crossed into delusion. "You don't get to erase me, Brielle. I made you interesting." The security guard shifted, ready to intervene. I nodded slowly. "No, Matthew. You made me invisible. I just decided to stop being." He reached for my arm, but before his fingers touched me, the guard stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Matthew's face twisted. "You're really doing this?" I stared straight into his eyes. "Go home." He hesitated, then dropped his hand defeated. "You'll regret this," he murmured as the guard escorted him out. I stood there until the glass doors closed behind him, my pulse loud in my ears. That night, I sat on my couch watching my phone buzz with incoming notifications, anonymous messages, fake accounts, all with the same tone liar, cheater, manipulator. My lawyer Nora texted me, "Save everything. Don't respond. We'll trace the IPs." By the end of the week, we had proof all the fake accounts led back to his apartment's Wi-Fi. But that didn't stop him. He began emailing Sebastian's clients. "Just wanted to warn you, the woman he's dating manipulates people for power." Then came the mass email. He CC'd over 80 people in our professional circle. The subject line, "The truth about Brielle Carter and Sebastian Hale." Inside paragraphs of slander, half-truths, and melodrama. He even attached an old photo of me asleep captioned, "The face of deceit." It would have been laughable if it weren't so public. Sebastian came over that night, holding a bottle of whiskey like an offering. "Cheers to unhinged exes," he joked softly. I almost smiled. "Cheers to restraining orders." We clinked glasses, but the moment the sound echoed, something inside me cracked. The tears came fast, hot, angry, humiliating. Sebastian put the glass down and just held me. No speeches, no advice, just stillness. Through the blur of it, I whispered, "He's not just trying to ruin me. He wants me to become him." Sebastian's voice was steady. "Then don't. Let him drown in his own noise." The words should have been comforting, but all I felt was exhaustion. Because the truth was, kindness doesn't protect you from cruelty. It just makes the blows feel sharper. And Matthew wasn't finished. The next morning, my lawyer called. "Brielle, brace yourself," Nora said grimly. "He's suing you." I laughed, the sound hollow, disbelieving. For what? For emotional distress. And apparently, strategic heartbreak. Strategic heartbreak. That was the moment I realized this wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was war. I used to think courtroom dramas were exaggerated for TV, that no one could truly be that theatrical in real life. Then I saw Matthew walk into the courtroom. He wore a tailored navy suit, pressed expensive, but it couldn't hide the cracks. His hair was too perfectly styled, his smile too tight, his eyes too wild. I'd seen that look before, the one that said, "I'm losing control, but I'll pretend it's strategy." My lawyer, Nora, leaned over and whispered, "Let him perform. We'll win with silence." I nodded, gripping the table edge, my palms damp. The case was absurd from the start. Emotional distress, intentional, psychological harm, reputation, sabotage. He'd spun a story where I was some calculating villain who strategically seduced his rival Sebastian to destroy his career and self-worth. He even claimed I'd manipulated industry perception to position myself as morally superior. Translation, I lived my life and it bothered him. His lawyer, young overconfident, stood up first. "Your Honor, my client was the victim of a deliberate campaign of humiliation. Miss Carter's relationship with Mr. Hale began within days of their breakup. It's clear she intended to wound him publicly." Nora rose calm as ice. "Your Honor, my client's campaign consists of getting promoted and attending public events. Meanwhile, Mr. Rivers," she gestured to Matthew, "has been sending harassing emails, creating fake accounts, and defaming both Miss Carter and Mr. Hale. We have documentation for every instance." She clicked the projector remote. The courtroom filled with screenshots, emails, posts, security footage of him showing up at my office building. A digital trail of obsession and denial. Matthew's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Nora spoke over him. Additionally, Mr. Rivers' so-called evidence of emotional manipulation includes a breakup text he sent ending a 2.5-year relationship via message. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, frowned. "He broke up with you?" she asked, turning to Matthew. He shifted in his seat. "Yes, but..." "And now you're suing her for moving on." "It's not that simple," he stammered. She weaponized my words." The judge's brow lifted. "What words exactly?" He hesitated, then said, voice small, "I told her she was too kind. That kind girls get stepped on." The judge exhaled slowly. "Mr. Rivers, if I may speak plainly, you stepped on her and now you're angry she walked away." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. He slammed his hand on the table. "She made me a joke. Everyone laughs behind my back." Nora didn't flinch. "And who told everyone about your breakup, Mr. Rivers, who leaked stories to the blogs?" He froze. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Rivers, this isn't therapy. This is a courtroom, and from what I see, your wounds are self-inflicted." He opened his mouth, but his lawyer tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently. It didn't matter. The damage was done. When it was our turn, Nora played one last clip security footage from my office building lobby. Matthew pacing, shouting, trying to grab me while security intervened. The timestamp matched the day he'd claimed peaceful reconciliation attempts. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "Peaceful, you say?" Matthew's lawyer dropped his pen. When the verdict came, it was quick, almost merciful. Case dismissed. The court finds no basis for Mr. Rivers' claims. The counter-motion for a restraining order is granted. Mr. Rivers is to stay a minimum of 500 feet away from both Miss Carter and Mr. Hale. Effective immediately. Bang! Gavel down. For a moment I didn't move. My brain lagged behind my body. Then I heard Nora's whisper, "You're free." Matthew stood motionless, his face flushing red. Then came the tears. Not sadness, but fury. "This isn't fair," he shouted. "She ruined my life. She stole everything." The judge's voice cut him off like a knife. "No, Mr. Rivers. You handed it to her when you walked away." He broke down right there, shoulders shaking, muttering something about betrayal and destiny. Security led him out as he yelled, "You'll regret this, Brielle. You'll regret making me your villain." The courtroom doors slammed behind him, and the sound echoed like an exorcism. I sat there still. It wasn't joy I felt, not even victory. It was relief so heavy it hurt. Sebastian was waiting outside, leaning against the wall, his expression unreadable. When he saw me, he smiled, soft, proud, patient. "Did we win?" he asked. "We survived," I said. He handed me a coffee, my favorite oat milk cinnamon sprinkle. That's the better kind of win. As we walked out into the sunlight, cameras flashed. Journalists had caught wind of the trial, and questions flew like bullets. "Miss Carter, do you have a comment? Was it true you dated your ex's rival? Do you regret anything?" I stopped, turned slightly toward them, and said calmly, "Only that I ever apologize for being kind." The headlines wrote themselves. "Kind woman wins lawsuit against bitter ex. PR manager's lawsuit. Crumbles after ex's calm defense. The woman he called too kind just got the last word." By evening, the story had gone viral. My inbox overflowed with messages from strangers, women mostly thanking me for staying graceful under fire. Graceful. That word used to feel like an insult. Now it felt like armor. Later that night, Sebastian and I cooked dinner together. The laughter came easily, something light returning after months of pressure. At one point, he looked at me serious. "You know what I admire most about you." I raised an eyebrow. My sarcasm. He smiled. "Your restraint. You could have destroyed him, but you chose peace." I thought about it for a long moment. Maybe that's the difference between us. He mistook kindness for weakness. I learned its strength, the quiet kind. He nodded, eyes warm. The kind that wins wars without starting them. We ate in silence for a while, the kind that feels like closure. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night without dreaming of him. But peace, I would soon learn, never lasts long in stories like ours. Because some people, when they lose control of the narrative, will burn everything just to stay in it. The world moved on after the trial. I thought Matthew would too. But obsession doesn't vanish with a gavel. It lingers like smoke after a fire, invisible but poisonous. 2 weeks after the hearing, I got an email from HR. Anonymous reports have surfaced online claiming you fabricated your promotion through unethical conduct. Attached was a screenshot from a fake account. I didn't need to look twice to know whose hand had written those words. Nora handled it quickly. "We'll send a cease and desist. Same lawyer, same playbook. He'll fold again." And he did, at least legally. Emotionally, he just changed battlegrounds. He lost his job not long after. His company couldn't ignore the gossip, the screenshots, the meltdown in court. He'd burned every bridge that once held him up. His LinkedIn turned silent. His Instagram bio changed to "Healing from Betrayal," teaching others to spot narcissists. He started a podcast, "Dating the Devil: How I Survived a Covert Narcissist." Episode titles like "When the Kind Ones Manipulate You" and "Sleeping with the Enemy." My story of professional sabotage. I listened once against my better judgment. Hearing my own life twisted into fiction made my skin crawl. The way he said my name, soft, reverent, venomous. Brielle Carter taught me that kindness is a mask people wear when they want power. Sebastian reached over and gently paused the audio. "Don't give him your ears," he said. He was right. I deleted the podcast, blocked the link, and went back to living. And life was good. Really good. Sebastian's firm promoted him to VP after the trial. My own department thrived under my leadership. We traveled Italy, Tokyo, Sydney. Places I'd only dreamed of while sitting behind spreadsheets. But happiness is quiet, and quiet has a way of amplifying ghosts. One afternoon, while watering my balcony plants, I spotted an envelope wedged under the door, my name handwritten, no stamp. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Still I did. 4 pages, single-spaced, rambling, words bleeding into one another like a fever dream. You ruined my destiny. You stole my narrative. You owe me $3,400 for therapy sessions caused by your emotional manipulation. At the end, he'd written, "One day when your world crumbles, you'll remember who truly loved you." I stared at the signature, the same looping M I used to tease him about when we were happy. I forwarded the letter to Nora. She didn't even hesitate. Violation of the restraining order. Want to press charges. I thought about it. About dragging this circus back into court. About seeing him again, watching him twist my piece into theater. "No," I said finally. "He's already serving his own sentence." Nora sighed. "Then at least let me reply." She sent one word. "No." And that was it. Weeks passed. Then months. I stopped checking the news. Stopped wondering who he was talking to or what version of me he'd invented this time. But the universe apparently wasn't done reminding me how far I'd come. I ran into Brittany, one of his old PR friends, at a Whole Foods of all places. She froze when she saw me, guilt flickering across her face. "Brielle." "Hey." I smiled politely. "Hey." She hesitated, then blurted out, "He's not doing well." I didn't respond. "He moved back with his parents," she continued. "He refuses therapy, says every therapist takes your side. He's still obsessed. Talks about you and Sebastian constantly." My chest tightened, but not with fear, with pity. "Is he getting help?" "They're trying," she said softly. "But he's convinced he's the victim of a conspiracy, says your lawyer hacked his accounts." I exhaled slowly. "I hope he finds peace." Brittany gave a sad smile. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," I said, "for both our sakes." That night I sat on my balcony again, the same place I'd stood months ago after the breakup. But now the city below wasn't a battlefield. It was just alive. Sebastian came out with 2 glasses of wine. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." About him. About me. About how easy it is to lose yourself when you start defending who you are to people who'll never understand. He nodded, and I am done defending. He smiled, raising his glass. To that, I echoed. Later, while we cooked dinner, my phone buzzed an Instagram notification. Another fake account. Another hateful comment under our photo. Fake happiness built on betrayal never lasts. Before I could even report it, it vanished. Deleted. Sebastian chuckled. "They're getting faster at catching him." "Maybe that's the universe's version of closure," I said. He wrapped his arms around me, chin resting on my shoulder. "Closure isn't when they stop attacking you. It's when it stops mattering." I smiled. Then I think I'm finally there. For a long time, I believed Matthew's voice defined the story. His accusations. His bitterness. His need to make me the villain. But now, standing in a kitchen that smelled like garlic and peace, I realized something profound. He hadn't ruined me. He'd revealed me. And I wasn't the woman who got stepped on anymore. I was the one who learned how to walk away without looking back. It's strange how quiet victory sounds. No applause, no triumphant music, just the hum of a dishwasher, the scent of coffee, and the peace of a morning without fear. 8 months had passed since that breakup text, the one that began with, "You're too kind." I still remember it word for word. I don't think I'll ever forget it, and maybe I'm not supposed to. Some wounds aren't meant to vanish. They're meant to remind you how strong you became after bleeding. Now I wake up beside Sebastian in a space we built together. Warm light through linen curtains, a framed photo from our trip to Tuscany hanging by the bed. We laugh easily. Work feels lighter. Life feels earned. Sometimes when the sun hits the window just right, I catch my reflection and think, this is what peace looks like. Not loud, not showy, but deeply lived. Over breakfast one Saturday, Sebastian looked up from his phone and said, "Guess who popped up again?" I didn't even have to ask. "Matthew." He nodded. He posted a video titled, "How to Heal from Betrayal, My Journey Through the Storm." Only a few hundred views. "Therapy through self-pity," I muttered. Should I report it? I shook my head. No. Let him speak to his own echo. He watched me quietly. "You really don't hate him, do you?" I stirred my coffee. "No. Hating him means he still matters. Sebastian smiled faintly. You know that's what I admire most about you. You didn't let him turn you into him. Kindness isn't about staying soft, I said. It's about staying human. We sat in silence for a while, comfortable like two people who didn't need to fill the air to feel understood. Later that afternoon, I went through some old boxes I'd never bothered unpacking since the move, the ones filled with remnants of my old life. I found Matthew's old coffee mug, a postcard from Paris with our handwriting intertwined, and the little notebook where I used to write things I was grateful for. The last entry was dated the night before he broke up with me. Grateful for love that feels safe. I closed the notebook gently. Maybe love isn't meant to feel safe all the time. Maybe it's meant to challenge you to break what's weak so what's strong can grow. That evening, I had dinner with my team from work, mostly women. We talked about leadership, ambition, burnout. One of the younger analysts, Lily, hesitated before speaking. Can I ask you something personal? Sure, I said. How do you stay kind in a job where everyone's out for themselves? I smiled, not because it was easy to answer, but because it wasn't. You draw lines, I said. You stay kind, but you stop apologizing for it. You help others, but you don't set yourself on fire to keep them warm. You treat people with decency, even when they don't deserve it, because it's about who you are, not who they are. She nodded, thoughtful. That's harder than it sounds. Yeah, I said softly, but worth it. Later that night, I walked home alone. The air was cool, the kind that feels like the world forgiving you for something you never should have blamed yourself for. When I reached the apartment, Sebastian was reading on the couch. He looked up, smiling. Good night. Yeah, I said, hanging up my coat. I think I helped someone tonight. You always do. I sat beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? You mean if you'd never left him? I nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then you wouldn't have found you. And maybe that was it, the real ending. Not the lawsuit, not the public humiliation, not even the victory. Just the simple, quiet truth that I had found myself underneath the noise, the chaos, the stories others told about me. As I drifted to sleep later, the city lights blinked softly through the window. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who thought kindness meant shrinking, who mistook silence for grace and people-pleasing for love. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her this. They will call you too kind, too forgiving, too soft. But the world needs women who stay gentle and still refuse to be broken. Be kind, but don't be quiet. Be strong, but don't be cruel. Win not because they doubted you, but because you finally stopped doubting yourself. The next morning, over coffee, Sebastian asked, Do you think he'll ever move on? I looked out at the sunrise streaks of gold breaking through the gray. Maybe, I said. But even if he doesn't, I already have. He smiled, reaching across the table. So what's next for you, Ms. Senior Director? I grinned. Kindness. But this time on my terms. Voiceover, final monologue. He said kind girls get stepped on. Maybe he was right. Until one stood up. He said I was too kind to win, so I stopped playing his game and started living mine. Kindness isn't weakness. It's just not for people who confuse gentleness with surrender. And if that means I finish first in peace and love in life, then so be it.